Hi, Sandy.
Hi, Jennifer. So Rama will take some time to join for maybe 5, 6 minutes.
Okay.
Uh, by that time, can you just briefly summarize what did you guys discuss last time? Like, I think Rama was telling me you had some issues with Corda.
No, I didn't have some issues. I just, well,
Hmm.
I'd had some questions. Uh,
Okay.
what we did is we went through the basic setup and the testing. And I think there
Hmm.
was a recording of it. So you can always, anyone who's interested can go back and look. Um, then what one of the things that I was trying to do with the um, new code is to really carefully segregate out all of the code that was application specific, so that we could look at it or so that, in the future you could look at it to figure out if it's really in the right spot. Um, One of the things, so I'll just go and show you a little bit what I showed Rama. Let me share my screen on how the
Okay.
testing is set up. Um, uh, so get this out of the way. So I have submitted a pull request with the Corda implementation. So there's four
Hmm.
directories under package. There's the core, there's the test, there's the Corda, and there's the fabric. And all of the testing is under test.
Okay.
So for testing, well, how does it? So I'll show you how it looks in CI. Uh,
Hmm.
so the COPM tests are under their own workflow, and they're in
Hmm.
a matrix job. So we've got fabric, Corda. And the locks, since they are just on one network, they're just tested on one
Hmm.
network. So the tests are uh, we there's a abstraction of the testers. So there's two interfaces that are implemented when testing. One of them sets up the environment and gets the parties and the clients to talk to it, and an abstraction of the assets. And
This
then
is this is an actual network or a mock network?
this is an actual network.
Actual
So
network. Okay.
so the tests are all end to end. So you
Okay.
can see, let's look at the Corda fabric one. So we've got the whole shebang
Okay.
going here. And it's funny, I don't have enough memory really to do it. So if I
Oh.
want to run this test on my laptop, I have to close everything else down. So I can't even have an IDE open. I didn't realize when I bought my laptop how low memory it was. I didn't even think to check it. I have Raspberry Pis that have more memory than my laptop.
How much memory do you have?
Only 16 gigs.
Oh, and 16 is not enough.
No, no.
It's
So
strange.
yeah,
Okay.
so uh not for all that stuff. So when I go
Mhm.
and start up the network, I have a memory thing going and it just goes, all right.
Mhm.
So anyway, back to the abstraction. So there's also an abstraction for figuring out for issuing the assets and then checking who owns them.
Mhm.
So for pledge play, like, so for instance, for Corda, this is going and using the CLI to just run the commands. to check the asset state and so on. So in the pledge claim test, we go and for a given pair of networks, this is turning back. We can't actually transfer an NFT from Corda to Fabric due to this issue. So in this one case, we turn back, but you can do tokens just fine.
Okay.
So we go and we set the networks on the network types. So it would be Fabric and Corda or whatever. And then we get the parties for the network and their certificates and something to check their assets. We add the non-fungible asset, then do the pledge, then do the claim. We expect all of that to work. And then when it's all done, party A should not own the non-fungible asset and party B should own it.
Okay.
And then for tokens, it's very similar. Uh, we look at the start balance. So we add some tokens, we look at the start balance. And do the pledge, do the claim, and then afterwards we expect party A to have the exchange quantity less and party B to have the exchange quantity more.
Okay.
So, and that all passes. So for lock and claim, it's similar except just on the one network. So we go and we also check that the party are on the same. It's funny because it's so easy to forget that the exchange is only for people on the same network. It's like there needs to be a German word for this scenario because with the word exchange, you think all kinds of different things. So it's very similar. We go and we lock and then we claim and then the tokens, we check the counts at the end. Or rather, for non-fungible, we check the ownership, and then for tokens, we check the balance to make sure that everything changed hands. So for verified view, all of it seemed to be easiest to just piggyback on the pledge and claim because it wasn't, I tried to do it like in the data sharing, use the commands that are set up in the data sharing, but they're not necessarily set up in the full, for every single combination. So what I knew was, because I just done pledge and claim, what I knew was set up for every single network conversation or network
What
combination
do you mean by
was.
it's not covering all the combinations?
So read state is what's used, I think. It's something like
Yeah.
read no, read, just read. Okay, so we've got this read. I don't think it's
Yeah.
opened up from, for instance, Corda to Fabric, or like there's some combinations where it just doesn't work. So
It should work, all the combinations, like we have tested it out. But if
mm,
we are facing some issue, maybe you can just tell us, we can debug.
hmm So anyway, yeah. So is there even so this is my channel, simple state. Where's the Corda? Was it, so let's look. The
Corda would be this request.
Yeah, so we're going
Corda would
from, but
be,
then when we want to read a Corda thing,
maybe the function name might be different. Let me check.
mm-hmm.
Get state by key. That's the function name.
Get state by key. So we can look at instead of changing the test. But
Mhm.
it's the same idea. So let's go back to the
Yeah, here, open it right on the right hand side. This data transfer fabric CLI tests. And above that, there would be data transfer codec line tests.
so mm-hmm. So
This.
anyway, getting back to what was implemented,
Mhm.
let's look at the get verified view. So what was just it stays very close to what was already done. And gets so it sets up a pledge to read and then gets the uh, verified view, new verified view request.
They're
Mm-hmm.
trying to read a
And then this is
pledge.
the, yeah, and then this is the view address is read pledge. So here we're getting back, because this varies by network, the command on the other network, it goes into like it's abstracted. So we go and we get a command to read the pledge, and then this is the command that's passed down. And then we expect the data to come back to be a string. And I just log it because
Mhm.
it's usually just either it's just a string that comes back. Okay.
Okay, you haven't tried the simple state for the coda where you can just read a state?
No, I haven't tried the simple state for Corda. Uh,
Okay. Do you want to try or I mean, reading pledge is also just fine.
yeah, so yeah, so we need to change the setup so that it was setting up the different contracts. Um, but it's possible.
So okay, in Corda there we have just one contract where even the simple state is also there and simple asset is also there. So you don't
Okay.
need to deploy a second contract.
Mm-hmm.
Just you need to call a different function to
Mm-hmm.
manage a state.
Yeah. Well, I can try. Um,
Mhm.
so we'll see.
Okay.
So the questions that I wanted to clear up were about the Corda implementation. So in making the Corda COPM server has quite a lot of application specific code. Um, so
Mhm.
if we look and we look at the Corda configuration, it has an abstraction for the asset contracts. So the ones that are set up are the just there's only two set up. I know there's another one. There's the non-fungible house token. Um, but it looked like the implementation for that for transfer wasn't finished.
Uh, I mean, it was finished, but okay. So we can we now take these application specific things as a parameter?
So the thing is that they're not going to change based on, they're not going to change on the fly. So these application specific things are set up in
This
the
is not
chain
the
code.
test code, right? This is the actual.
Yeah, this is the app. So
Okay.
instead of, so these were hard coded in the CLI, and these are things
Mhm.
that change according to how they're being used. So they've been pulled out here into a uh, a separate
Okay,
kind
I
of
mean,
configuration step.
okay. The thing is the CLI and the client are just a testing tool. So some things we may have hard coded there,
Yeah.
but the code apps which are like to be deployed on a, if someone wants to like use the Cacti, the code apps that are going to be deployed there,
Yeah.
there we like recommend not using hard coded values. So like the interop code app or the SDK is one of them. And
Hmm. So that's why this is all separated out. But somewhere somebody has to figure them out, right?
yeah. So in SDK, we take it as a parameter because I mean, this will depend upon the application that is being deployed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So someone will have to set it up once. And
Yes.
after that, yeah.
So this is the sort of thing I'm not sure if you were at my presentation last Thursday, but this is the sort of thing I think should be pushed down to the contract level. Uh, so if you register the assets in the chain code
Mhm.
with abstraction, then suddenly you don't need to. There isn't there not as much information needs to be known by all of the clients. You know what I mean? Because if you're saying, well, the
Okay.
client
So
has
you're
to
saying
supply this, then the
when you
client has to know it.
deploy the
Yeah,
contract as an initialization step, just feed in all these values at once. And
that's right.
okay, yeah, that's a good
Because
suggestion.
because otherwise everybody has to know everything all the
Mhm.
time. And so you're
Yeah,
always supplying this configuration information for every single step, and it's doesn't need
yeah, that's
to.
true.
It doesn't. It should be separated out to make things easier.
Mhm.
Um, the other thing is the issuer on the Corda.
Mhm.
Everyone, so all of the CLI took issuer and they took observers.
Mhm.
So this is also something that I think the client shouldn't be responsible for. Uh, it's something that is an attribute of the asset. So this is also something I think that should be looked at. Um, in the fabric, there's something actually sort of similar to observers that comes from the discovery process.
So observers are actually parties who should be allowed to view this transaction, and
Yeah.
I think that can depend upon what transaction and what asset we are talking about. But
Mm-hmm.
issuer maybe will be same always. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah, we'll have to think about this.
Okay. The the other thing, let's see. Yeah, so that was my main Corda question was because this observers is something that it might I wasn't sure whether it was something that changed on the fly or not. I think it's probably dependent on the application and like you say this sort of thing that's going on. But again, that's
Mhm.
it's more like a configuration thing. So you'd want to be able to register, well, for these types of transactions for this asset, these people are interested,
Mhm.
and not have the client supply it for every single interaction of that type. Okay, so that's that.
Okay.
So the this
There's
is
one more point of view. Like client necessary, it doesn't necessarily mean that it would be an end user. It can also
mhm.
be the backend developer who can have a configuration set up, and
Yes,
they can always pass the parameters.
yes, the configuration has to come from somewhere, uh, though.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we can keep it as a parameter and whoever is using it,
Hmm.
because we assume that the user would be a developer, not an end user. So the developer can handle it, right? Does that make sense?
Hmm. But there's a certain
Because okay, I mean, I was thinking of about there can be one more scenario where
hmm.
since this interop code app will be just one application, it could be deployed with a network where there are multiple contracts.
Yes, that's the thing. And so the interop, every contract, you've got
Yeah,
to know.
with every contract, these values would differ, the
Yeah,
issuer, the function names, everything.
y- yeah, exactly. So you really need, so let's go back to this. So,
Yeah. Yeah, that's why we kept it as a parameter. We didn't think about it much.
mhm. But the thing is, when you have the client passing in all the parameters, then everybody has to know, even the people on the other side. So the remote, so if we look at the interop configuration, we need to know a whole bunch of stuff about what's going on over on the other side. And this was a case statement in the CLI.
Um, we need to know, yes, are you saying we need to know information about the other network?
Yes, yes. So you need to know what kind of you need to know because the
Or is it just the
commands.
function name that we need to call?
So the commands for getting the pledge are quite different depending on whether it's a Corda. So this is the command for get pledge info. So
Mhm,
on Fabric, it looks like this.
mhm.
Uh, and then on Corda, it looks like this. And the contract that it's in changes depending on the asset. So for instance, the host token is implemented in a different contract. So
Okay.
if
So
I
you
wanted to
mean
exchange host tokens, I'd need to know, uh,
the
I'd need to set up,
contract name and the
yes,
function name?
yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think by design, we assume that you need to know at least that much for the remote network, right, Rama?
Yeah, there's a so the basis for interoperation is uh, okay. Our assumption or our goal for interop was to not require the networks to uh, make big changes within.
Hmm.
So, given the networks have their particular structures, their internal naming conventions, their internal namespaces, and the contracts have been deployed. So, we have to work with legacy contracts. How do you then identify and target an asset for moving, or how do you identify and target a particular view for querying? So for that purpose, we actually separated these two parts, the addressing part and the protocol. And
Hmm.
I think I mentioned this SATP protocol that we've been trying to standardize
Yeah.
early on. So there are a couple of drafts there that I have left for people to view, and every IETF meeting, I keep talking about that just to bring people's attention. So one of those so there are two drafts there that describe exactly these two things. One describes a specification for how to construct an address for a view, and
Yeah.
then what should go into that particular view. And second draft is about a request response protocols where you request a view address and you get back a view. So this is in order to then create the view address. You do need to know something about how things are named in the other network. Otherwise, you cannot really support legacy systems. You cannot really support new systems in the future that want to go their own way and who do not want to, let's say, conform to one global way of naming things. If we could enforce a global way of naming things, then really the interop problem would be much simpler than it is. But what we want to do is to support different kind of networks, different kind of naming systems from the get-go, and keep making it extensible.
But that's what you sort of have an opportunity to shape what the implementer has to do. But it's not like they can. It's not like a pre-existing asset will leap into the system all by itself. You still need to write some adapter code, right?
Yeah, and for that we do have those library functions, right, in the chain code, which you have to write to lock. We call them lock asset and claim asset and so on. So there, because we provide in Cacti, we provide the contracts, the interop chain code and the interop CORDAP, and we also show through those simple asset examples that you need to write this kind of function in order to lock your particular asset, but you will have to write some internal logic to make sure that your own contract locks the asset, because we cannot have an infinitely flexible interop system that will work for any kind of contract, because people write contracts to manage assets. The sky is the limit for them. Most systems, initially when they created Ethereum or they created Bitcoin, the scripting languages were very limited by design, because at least for Bitcoin, they had a very limited purpose. In Ethereum, they had Solidity, which restricted a lot of conventional programming features, but then it also allowed a lot of arbitrary programming features too. So it did not, and then later blockchains and ledgers like Fabric and Corda just said, we'll just give you create the execution environment for you. What you choose to execute there is your choice. You can write an arbitrary program and you can design your asset in an arbitrary way. So yeah, I mean, that's something that you're right. I mean, we do have an opportunity to shape things, but we will succeed in shaping things if everybody starts adopting the shapes we have created. Now, to that extent, there's another draft that people are working on in the same IETF group called asset profiles. So they are actually trying to standardize the way an asset is defined. And honestly, if that succeeds, it's some of your questions here will be answered, because then we can create standard interfaces for assets, which assuming everybody who wishes to be interoperable conforms to those interfaces, we just need to code up how to invoke those interfaces in this kind of code, right? And then internally, any other logic they need to do, it's really on the people implementing that particular contract. So people are working on this. At this point, we are not quite there yet. So what we have just provided does require a bit more work on the part of users. When we get more standards, when we get more convergence, then yeah, we can implement those standards and not be and make life easier for the developers. I think that's a process that's been going on actually for the past few years. And the first few versions of Fabric were a nightmare to use for developers, and then they made it much simpler going on later versions, because then they figured out what people actually needed and what we could get away imposing. So.
Okay. But one of my points is that, well, if in your documentation you have method signatures that somebody has to implement, and they have to read the documentation to see what those method signatures are supposed to do, you can also supply those method signatures in an interface.
Yeah. So specifically, which method signatures they're talking about here?
So I'm talking about the lock, for instance. So you need to have, let me just pull this up. So for lock to work, you need to have these method names, and they need to take these parameters. And if you don't have a contract with those method names or those parameters, lock isn't going to work.
This is Bezu, right? Where
This over here, this is fabric.
Oh, the fabric, okay.
Yeah. So the claim, I mean, so this is claim. So this is what you need. This is what you need to implement. So
sure. I take your point. Yeah.
This may as well be an interface.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, I agree. Is there something? So we have to get to the what you do for the remaining, I guess, 2.5 weeks.
Yes.
Maybe this is something that if you want to take a shot at this, just as an experiment, just try this out, and then we'll see
One question
how it works. Yeah.
In Fabric, the names are fixed, right, Rama? And because of the interface?
When we're importing the I forget that we had two different modes, right? We had one mode where
We have two different modes. So if you
can
use a
import,
library, then
then
the function name can be anything.
Right. Yeah. To go back and see, I mean, it's been a while since I looked at the code. So
okay.
There is we did define an interface. If you look at the inside the Fabric interop chain code, there is a subfolder called interfaces, and there we have an interface for which encapsulates the entire API you need for the HDLC protocol for locking assets, claiming assets, checking to see whether an asset is logged, and so on. So that is there. And I think the contracts are, if you look at the simple contracts, or the sample contracts, the ones with the asset in the names, they do import that interface, and they exercise the functions in that interface. So that is there. I think you're asking for something a bit more. So it further eases the burden on the developer.
Yeah, sort of. So that we go and instead of the consumers or the people using the API needing to know because if you don't have, for instance, an asset issue command, this claim isn't going to work in Corda. If you don't, so instead of supplying that at the client level, what if you registered the implementation in the chain code so that then suddenly all of this code that somebody has to write, it's in one place. And then the people that are it's like, you know how you have in the same way that you have the permissions per function set up and for the different types, you would have, well, okay, for a asset of this type, this is the implementation. And so then it's just the less configuration, I think, throughout the system, the easier it is for people to adopt.
Yeah, I definitely take the last point. So what would make this easier? Some kind of a registration option? Is that what you're
Yes.
thinking?
So the asset types are registered in the chain code. So you figure out your interface, and then you specify the abstraction, and then in the chain code you have a map for the interop for the type to the implementation. And then suddenly all of the things that are using this don't need to know as much. They can just you can present a stable interface where you can just have your COPM commands, and those are doing what they need to do based on the registered asset.
Right. Yeah, I need to think about this. How, like specifically, if we have the like something like the simple asset chain code, how would it work there? And in that particular chain code, we have two hard coded kinds of assets, right? We have bond
Mhm.
type and we have a currency type, I think, or a token type.
Yeah,
So
yes.
instead of that, I think you're saying we'll just have a bare bones chain code where you can there's a chain code command we call register asset, and you can
Mhm.
register an asset which represents a bond or maybe
Yeah.
even a generic non-fungible token, and then we have another registry which register option which registers the fungible token, right? Something like that.
Yeah, that's right. That's it exactly.
Okay.
In the interrupt chain code or in the
I
interrupt
think in
chain code,
the
right?
Yeah, in the interrupt chain code. So then,
Okay.
because there's this difference in the implementations, that the clients talk to the interrupt contract in Corda and the sample or the asset contract in Fabric. So everything could actually talk to, and the reason that isn't set up that way in Corda is I think because all these other parameters are
Mhm.
supplied. So
Yeah.
so this is actually a reasonable template for how you would register within the chain code. So you would just supply all of the stuff that you need to do the mint and the burn, and change
yeah
the owner and so on, uh, down at that level, instead of passing it down from here.
that now makes sense. So
Mhm.
then if anybody has already written the chain code, they will need to add registration and maybe deregistration
Yeah,
uh, logic to that chain code, right?
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
not much more than that. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, yeah, that was like my biggest insight from implementing this. So I can take a crack at how that would look. It'll be a bit of
Sure.
a so and I'll also finish up some of the things that Peter asked for, and I think that'll take me out. That'll easily be enough to fill up the rest of the.
Yeah, I think that would be, yeah. And I think your next PR, Sandeep also needs to look at it. I think you're busy with some other things, so yeah, just bear with us. We'll take another couple of weeks, or maybe
Okay.
till the end of your mentorship.
Okay. Sounds good.
Cool. So your internship ends before Thanksgiving, or your mentorship?
Oh, I'm not sure. I'm just thinking about it as ending at the end of the month. We will have a little, like, Thanksgiving is a huge holiday in,
Yeah.
so I might not be working exactly at the end of the month.
Yeah, no, I understand. And if you have to like some minor wrap up things, some peers aren't done by then, you'll be available after that, just to wrap things up.
I'm not totally sure. I don't have any specific plans, but I do have some ideas for other personal projects that I think I'd
Sure.
like to be working on. So I mean, it's not fully mapped out.
Yeah, no, I wasn't talking about taking too much of time. It's just if there is some PR, which has some, simple things to fix, then
Hmm.
if that isn't done before Thanksgiving, so I hope you can just monitor GitHub and just finish them up after
Yep.
that.
Yep.
Cool. And yeah, as I mentioned last week, we have these Hyperledger, now it's LFDT meetups, where mentees can present on what they did.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, if you're interested in that, we can ask David Boswell to book something, and or maybe schedule you in the next meetup that's coming up. So those are
Okay.
usually online, so you can, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think yeah. So what I would want to do with that sort of thing is just a general promotion for the Weaver and the Cacti. Uh
Mhm.
and then talk about what I did And so it would be mostly a educational presentation.
Yes, and yeah, and
Raising the
and-
profile of the project. So
yeah,
it
yeah,
needs
and also encouraging people to contribute, just like you did. So
exactly.
okay, cool. Thanks, Jennifer.
Okay, thank you.
See you soon.
Okay, bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.